In this video, we're gonna explore the methodology chapter of a typical dissertation, thesis, or research project. We'll unpack what exactly it is, why it's important, and how to go about writing it, step by step. So grab a cup of coffee, grab a cup of tea, whatever works for you, and let's jump into it. Hey, welcome to Grad Coach TV, where we demystify and simplify the oftentimes intimidating world of academic research. My name's Emma, and today we're going to dive into the research methodology chapter, specifically how to structure and write it up. If you're still in the early stages of writing your dissertation or thesis and need help understanding the research methodology basics or how to choose the right methodology for your project, we've also got separate videos covering those topics, so be sure to check them out. I'll include the links below. If you're new to Grad Coach TV, hit that subscribe button for more videos covering all things research related. Also, if you're looking for hands-on help with your research, check out our one-on-one coaching services, where we help you craft your research project step by step. It's like having a friendly professor in your pocket whenever you need it. If that sounds interesting to you, you can learn more and book a free consultation at gradcoach.com. All right, with that out of the way, let's get into it. So the first question we need to address is, what exactly is the research methodology chapter? Simply put, the methodology chapter is where you detail all of the research design choices you've made and explain why you made them. In other words, the point of the methodology chapter is to tell the reader, your marker, exactly how you designed your study and to justify each of your research design choices. For example, in the methodology chapter, you would highlight the type of research you conducted, qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods, how you collected your data, how you analyzed your data, and who or where you collected the data from. For each of these choices, you'd also explain why you chose them and how they all fit together. If this sounds a bit intimidating, don't worry. We'll explain all the key design choices in this video. Also, we've got loads of information about research design and methodology over on the Grad Coach blog, so be sure to check that out. I'll include a link below. Now that we've covered the what, the next important thing to understand is the why. In other words, why is the methodology chapter important, and what purpose does it serve? Well, the methodology chapter is important for at least 3 reasons. Firstly, it presents an opportunity for you to demonstrate your understanding of research design theory, which is a key assessment criterion for markers. A flawed research design or methodology would mean flawed results. So the methodology chapter is vital, as it allows you to show the marker or examiner that you know what you're doing and that your results are credible. The second reason the methodology chapter is important is that it helps to make your study replicable. In other words, it allows other researchers to undertake your study using the same design and then compare their findings to yours. This is very important within academic research, as each study builds on previous studies. Without this chapter, no one would know exactly how you undertook your research, and therefore wouldn't be able to replicate the study in other settings. Lastly, the methodology chapter is important because it allows you to identify and discuss any methodological issues or shortcomings you encountered along the way, and to explain how you mitigated the impact of these. Your study will invariably have limitations. All studies do. So it's important to acknowledge these openly and highlight your study's value despite its limitations. Also, this discussion will help further demonstrate your understanding of research design, thereby earning you marks. Now that we've covered what the methodology chapter is and why it's important, it's time to jump into the exciting bit. how to structure and write up the chapter. First off, it's worth noting that the exact structure and contents of the methodology chapter will vary depending on the field of research, for example, business, chemistry, or engineering, as well as the university. So it's always a good idea to check the guidelines provided by your institution and, if possible, review past dissertations and theses from your university. Here, we're going to discuss a generic structure for a methodology chapter typically found in the sciences, especially the social sciences. Now, a quick tip. Before you start writing, we always recommend that you draw up a rough outline so that you have a clear direction to head in. Don't just start writing without knowing what will go where. If you do, you'll most likely end up with a disjointed, poorly flowing narrative. As a result, you'll waste a lot of time writing and rewriting, trying to stitch all the pieces together. Save yourself the pain by starting with the end in mind. All right, time to get down to business. Let's look at how to structure and write up the methodology chapter. Section 1, the introduction. As with all chapters in your dissertation or thesis, the methodology chapter should kick off with a brief introduction. In this section, you should remind the readers what the focus of your study is, especially the research aims. As we've discussed many times on this channel, your methodology needs to align with your research aims and research questions. So it's useful to front-load this content to remind the reader and yourself what you're trying to achieve with your research design. In this section, you can also briefly mention how you'll structure the chapter. This will help orient the reader and provide a bit of a roadmap so that they know what to expect. Importantly, you need to keep this introduction section brief, a paragraph or two max. Don't waste word count by waffling on here. Section 2, the research design. The next section of your methodology chapter is where you get down to business and present your research design and methodology to the reader. In this section, you'll need to detail and justify all the key design choices in a logical, intuitive fashion. This is the heart of your methodology chapter, so you need to get specific. Don't hold back on the details here. This is not one of those less is more situations. Broadly speaking, there are 7 key design choices that you'll need to discuss in the methodology chapter. As I mentioned, this may vary depending on your field of research and/or the university. But these 7 design choices are the most commonly covered ones. Let's take a look at each of them. Design choice number 1, the research philosophy. The research philosophy refers to the underlying beliefs regarding how data about a phenomenon should be gathered, analyzed, and used. Your research philosophy will serve as the core of your study and underpin all of the other research design choices. So it's essential that you understand which philosophy you'll adopt and why you made that choice. If you're not clear on this, or if the whole topic of research philosophy seems a bit fluffy to you, take the time to get clarity before you make any other research design choices. If your starting point is wrong, you're gonna run into many issues down the road. While there are quite a few research philosophies to choose from, 2 commonly adopted ones are positivism and interpretivism. Positivism is commonly the underlying research philosophy in quantitative studies. It states that the researcher, that's you, can observe reality objectively, and that there is only one reality, which exists independently or outside of the observer. Contrasted with this, interpretivism, which is often the underlying research philosophy in qualitative studies, assumes that the researcher plays a role in observing the world around them, and therefore, reality is unique to each observer. In other words, reality is observed subjectively. These are just two philosophies, but they demonstrate significantly different approaches to research and have a substantial impact on all of the other research design choices. So it's vital that you clearly detail and justify your research philosophy at the beginning of your methodology chapter, as it sets the scene for everything that follows. Design choice number 2, the research type. The next thing you'll typically need to discuss in your methodology chapter is the research type. The starting point for this is to indicate whether the research you conducted is inductive or deductive. With inductive research, theory is generated from the ground up. In other words, from the collected data. And therefore, these studies tend to be exploratory in terms of their approach. Deductive research, on the other hand, starts with an established theory, or set of theories, and builds onto it with collected data. Therefore, these studies tend to be confirmatory in approach. If this terminology sounds like gibberish to you, be sure to check out our other videos and blog posts where we break down some of the core concepts in research methodology. As always, I'll include links below. In this section of the chapter, you'll also need to indicate whether your study adopts a qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods methodology. As I've mentioned, there's a strong link between this choice and your research philosophy. So make sure that your choices are tightly aligned. Again, when you write this section up, remember to clearly justify your choices, as they form the foundation of your study. With those choices set down, it's time to talk strategy. Well, research strategy at least. Design choice number 3, the research strategy. The next design choice you'll need to discuss is your research strategy. In other words, your research action plan. Several research strategies exist, including experiments, case studies, ethnography, grounded theory, action research, and phenomenology. Let's look at 2 of these, experiments and ethnography, to see how they contrast. Experimental research makes use of the scientific method, where one group serves as the control group, in which no variables are manipulated, and another group serves as the experimental group, in which a specific variable of interest is manipulated. This type of research is undertaken under strict conditions in controlled, artificial environments. For example, within a laboratory. By having firm control over the environment, experimental research strategies often allow researchers to establish causation between variables. In other words, to prove that X causes Y. So, an experimental research strategy can be a good choice if you have research aims that involve identifying or measuring cause and effect. Ethnographic research, on the other hand, involves observing and capturing the experiences and perceptions of participants in their natural environment. For example, people at home or at the office. In other words, in an uncontrolled environment. Naturally, this means that this research strategy would be far less suitable if your research aims involve identifying causation, but would be very valuable if, say, you were looking to explore and examine a group culture. For example, corporate culture at a specific company. As you can see, the right research strategy will depend largely on your research aims and research questions. Therefore, as with every other design choice, it's essential to justify why you chose the research strategy you did. With the research strategy pinned down, it's time to dig into some of the more practical design choices. Design choice number 4, the time horizon. The next thing you need to cover in your methodology chapter is the time horizon. There are 2 options here, cross-sectional and longitudinal. In other words, whether the data for your study were all collected at one point in time, cross-sectional, or at multiple points in time, longitudinal. The choice you make here depends again on your research aims and research questions. If, for example, your aim is to assess how a specific group of people's perspectives regarding a topic change over time, you'd likely adopt a longitudinal time horizon, examining the same people's perspectives at multiple points in time. Another important factor here is that of practical constraints. In other words, whether you have the time necessary to adopt a longitudinal approach, which could involve collecting data over multiple months, years, or even decades. Oftentimes, the time pressures of your degree program will force your hand into adopting a cross-sectional time horizon, so keep this in mind. Right, on to the next research design choice. Design choice number 5, the sampling strategy. Next, you'll need to discuss your chosen sampling strategy. In other words, how you decided who to collect data from. There are 2 main categories of sampling: probability and non-probability sampling. Probability sampling involves a random and therefore representative selection of participants from a population, whereas non-probability sampling entails selecting participants in a non-randomized and therefore non-representative manner. For example, a non-probability strategy could involve selecting participants based on ease of access. This is called a convenience sample. The right sampling approach depends largely on what you're trying to achieve in your study. Specifically, whether you're trying to develop findings that are generalizable to a population or not. Practicalities and resource constraints also play a large role here, as it's often quite challenging to gain access to a truly random sample. Don't stress though. In many cases, a probability sampling strategy isn't necessary. Again, it depends largely on your research aims and questions. So make sure that your choice here is tightly aligned with your research aims. With your sampling strategy laid out, it's time to talk about how you'll collect your data. Design choice number 6, the data collection method. Next up, you'll need to explain how exactly you'll go about collecting the necessary data for your study. Your choice of data collection method, or methods, will depend on the type of data that you plan to collect. In other words, qualitative, words-based, or quantitative, numbers-based data. Typically, quantitative research relies on surveys, data generated by lab equipment, analytics software, or existing data sets. Qualitative research, on the other hand, often makes use of in-person collection methods such as interviews, focus groups, and participant observations. So as you can see, there is a tight link between this section and the design choices you outlined in earlier sections. So as always, it's important to make sure that you have a strong alignment between the various design choices. Design choice number 7, the analysis methods and techniques. The final major design choice that you need to address is your analysis methods and techniques. In other words, once you've collected your data, how will you go about analyzing it? Here, it's important to be very specific about your analysis method and/or techniques. Don't leave any room for interpretation. Also, as with all choices in this chapter, you need to justify each choice you make. What exactly you discuss here will depend largely on the type of study you're conducting. For qualitative studies, common analysis methods include content analysis, thematic analysis, and discourse analysis. For quantitative studies, you'll almost always make use of descriptive statistics, and in many cases, you'll also use inferential statistical techniques. For example, correlation and regression analysis. In this section, it's also important to discuss how you prepared your data for analysis and what software you used, if any. For example, quantitative data will often require some initial preparation, such as removing duplicates or incomplete responses and calculating composite measures. As always, remember to clearly state both what you did and why you did it. All right, with these 7 core design choices covered, the meat and potatoes of your methodology chapter are sorted. Now, it's time to move on to the next section of the chapter to discuss the limitations of methodology. Let's go check that out. Section 3, the methodological limitations. With your key research design choices outlined and justified, the next step is to discuss the limitations of your design. Importantly, no research design or methodology is perfect. There will always be trade-offs between the ideal design and the design that's practical and viable given your constraints. Therefore, this section of your methodology chapter is where you'll discuss the trade-offs you had to make and why these were justified given the context. So what goes into this section? Methodological limitations can vary greatly from study to study, ranging from common issues such as time and budget constraints to analysis method limitations or sampling issues. For example, you may find that you didn't manage to attract enough survey respondents to achieve the desired sample size, or that your sample is skewed heavily towards a certain demographic, resulting in reduced representativeness. In this section, it's important to be critical of the shortcomings of your study. By being critical, you'll demonstrate to your marker that you have a strong understanding of research design. So don't be shy here. At the same time, don't beat your study to death. Outline your study's methodological limitations, why these were justified given the context, how you mitigated their impacts to the best degree possible, and how your study still provides value despite these limitations. Once you've discussed your limitations, you're on the home stretch. It's time to wrap up the methodology chapter. Section 4. The concluding summary. Now that you've presented your research methodology and discussed the limitations, it's time to wrap up the chapter with a brief concluding summary. In this section, you'll want to concisely summarize the key takeaways from the chapter. There's no need to get into the weeds and repeat every design choice. A high-level summary will do. Alternatively, you could consider using a figure to summarize the key design decisions visually, especially if your university recommends using a specific model. Importantly, this section needs to be brief, a paragraph or 2 max. It's a summary after all. Also, make sure that when you write up your concluding summary, you only include what you've already discussed in your chapter. Don't add any new information. And there you have it, the methodology chapter in a nutshell. To quickly recap, the core structure of your methodology chapter should include the following. Number 1, a brief introduction section. Number 2, a detailed discussion of the 7 core research design choices, namely the research philosophy, research type, research strategy, time horizon, sampling strategy, data collection, and data analysis methods. Number 3, a discussion of the methodological limitations. And number 4, a brief concluding summary. As I've mentioned, the exact contents and structure of this chapter can vary between universities and field of study, so be sure to check in with your institution before you start writing. If possible, try to find dissertations or theses from former students of your specific degree program. This will give you a strong indication of your university's expectations and the norms in terms of the methodology chapter and all other chapters. Lastly, remember the golden rule of the methodology chapter. Justify every choice. Make sure that you explain clearly the why for every what, and reference credible methodology textbooks or academic sources to back up your justifications. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and leave a comment if you have any questions. Also, be sure to subscribe to the Grad Coach channel for more research-related content. If you need a helping hand with your methodology chapter, or any other chapter, remember to check out our private coaching service, where we work with you on a one-on-one basis, chapter by chapter, to help you craft a winning dissertation or thesis. If that sounds interesting to you, book a free consultation with a friendly coach at gradcoach.com. That's all for this episode of Grad Coach TV. Until next time, good luck.